The Boston Bruins have started their regular season playing 2 games. Hampus Lindholm gives us a little scare, and Cam Neely wants to play the Big Bad Bruins style this year, and they might actually be doing it. I'm going to talk about all this in today's video, so drop me a like, hit that subscribe button, and let's get into it. Well, the Boston Bruins are 2-0 into the regular season, and to be totally honest, I didn't see this coming. Before the season, we all, including everybody in my comments, we pretty much all kind of wrote the Bruins off. I wouldn't say beating the Chicago Blackhawks is that run-home victory, but, they handled the Washington Capitals in Game 1, winning 3-1, and then they win Game 2 at 4-3 over the Chicago Blackhawks in overtime in amazing fashion. They've had solid goaltending, they've been tight on the forecheck, and they've been playing that Big Bad Bruin style. I want to talk about that because as Cam Neely and Don Sweeney had a press conference earlier before the start of the season, they talked a lot about words that I can't use on here because I get demonetized if I do for some reason. So the thing in the vinegar, that's the way they wanted to describe it. And for years, I thought, the game has kind of passed them by to do that. So we looked at behind the B and we saw that they were trying to sign someone offensively. They said that they looked into the market and they couldn't get someone offensively. I was just doing Bruins Beat with Evan Marinofsky, and he was pointing out that he could see on the screen Vancouver Canucks. I don't think it's any secret that the only person that they were looking at offensively, if you look at this free agent class, was Brock Besser, who, by the way, scored a phenomenal goal last night in the Canucks game, so go check that one out. But that was the guy they were hedging their bets on to be that offensive talent. So that means they were going to have Pasternak up on the one side and then on the right side, and then they would have Besser on the second line as your second line right winger. That's just to say, even if they were going to sign them. I actually think, and I can't believe I'm going to say this, and I know it's only the start of the season, it kind of worked out in their favor. I love Brock Besser. I think he's a phenomenal goal scorer. I just don't think he would fit in with this Bruins team and their style. Even when they signed Tanner Jeannot, I was like, come on, what are we doing here? But at this point, it's more about the term. I think he's played well in 2 games. I think he was a good net front presence last night in the Chicago game. Easymont does that amazing move coming out of the corner with the puck, does all the work, and Jeannot does his job. He sticks in front of the net. He's hard to play against, and he pots in a goal. I can't fault him for it. In fact, I thought it was a good goal. I even thought Casey Middlestad's goal was a very good goal. I thought that he's not that guy that goes to the net, and he was able to capitalize on that being in the net front presence and scoring a goal there. When you think about it, he was just doing his job. He is more of a offensive, slow the game down guy, great passer, but instead, everybody's picking their roles. That second line with Arvidsson, with all that speed that guy's got. That guy has got probably the fastest skater on the Boston Bruins. I think that second line works well. I do find it funny that if you look at the second line, you've got Zaka, Arvidsson, and Casey Middlestad, or as I like to call them, the guys that the Bruins aren't in the playoffs are going to get traded at the trade deadline. But so far, the Bruins have played like the Big Bad Bruins. They've been tough on the forecheck. Their bottom 6 has kept them in games. Their new system, they've been very tight in that neutral zone. It's been very hard for teams to capitalize and break into the Boston Bruins zone. I do find that they get themselves caught running around a little bit in their own zone, but things will come. I think Strum's system is going to be a lot of 2-1 hockey games. It is what it is. That's what we're going to expect to see, and those turn into 3-1 games when they pull a goalie and if they don't score. But it could be 2-1 going the other way. They're playing very tight defensively. They're keeping the shots to the outside perimeter. They're letting their goalies see the shots, and when they don't, unfortunately, they're going in. I think in last night's game, I have always been one to harp on Jonas Corposello. I thought he was phenomenal in the overtime. I thought he was good enough to win the game yesterday. That second goal, it's a tip-off Jeannot's skate. It goes up top. I do think Zadorov, he's trying to hit everything that moves. I think he can be very effective. I think he's got enough skill for a big man, and he's got enough speed that he can use the body to start separating players from the puck. I'm all for huge hits and changing the momentum in a game. But on that, he fails to clear out the puck, brings it back to the Chicago player. That Chicago player then goes behind the net. Zadorov, instead of separating from the puck, looks like he's a little bit miffed, goes into the corner, hits him from behind the net, and then he's taking that guy out of the play. But at the same time, Chicago's still able to move that puck over to Connor Bedard. And I think that's the little things that the Bruins need to work on. Those little things. And I know I'm pointing out Zadorov, but those discipline moves, because Pasternak's penalty, I thought, was a discipline move as well. He didn't need to do that. And you have Sturm after every game so far talking about how much of a leader Pasternak is on the ice. And you even have here, where I live in Toronto, them talking on if the Boston Bruins make the playoffs, they're saying David Pasternak should be in the Hart conversation. They said if the Bruins made, Elliot Friedman on 32 Thoughts said, if the Bruins made the playoffs last year, David Pasternak would have been in the Hart Trophy conversation. And they say if the Bruins make the playoffs this year, and I agree with this, there has to be at least a Vezina, a Hart Trophy, or Jack Adams Award winner, and someone's got to be winning some major hardware, or Norris out of McAvoy. The Bruins aren't making the playoffs unless everything goes well. And so far it has for 2 games. They've been exactly what Cam Neely has been saying he's wanted for years. And for the people that watch me, it pains me to say something like that. It's only been 2 games. So I'm not getting ahead of myself here. I'm just saying in those 2 games that we've seen so far, they're 10th in goals per game. They're 12th in goals against per game. Their power play is 8th in the league, and their PK is 10th in the league. And that's because they're at 100%. Everybody's tied. They're tied for 10th. But I do think the Bruins are taking a lot of penalties again, and I do think that it can catch up to them. They can't rely on that penalty kill to keep them in games. The power play looks like they're moving the puck a lot better. They're more of a shot generation team and not, waiting for the right moment to get a shot off. And it was funny because Sturm said that in the post game that they were doing that a little bit in the first period of the game against Chicago. They're going to be generating a lot of shots, putting pucks on net, and good things will happen. Heck, look in that Vegas game. Jack Eichel was at the center ice line dumping it in, and it ends up going in. You never know unless you put the pucks on net. Goalies might not be seeing it. It could bounce off everybody. They're trying to generate more chances. The one thing the Bruins, I think, we'll see from this year is they're going to be in the game. I'm really worried that we might see a stinker against the Buffalo Sabres coming up. That's the one that they got to watch out. That's the danger game, I like to call them. The ones that you think that you should win, and then you go out and lay an egg. I'm very curious after 11 games that we really get to see who this Boston Bruins team is, because it's only been 2 games. I think you need at least 10 to 15 games to really understand, are they really understanding the system? Because so far, they've been very good. I did find, like I said before, they've been running around a little bit in their own zone, and their man-to-man coverage gets a little lost, and they forget a little bit. But there's been a lot of positives out of this team so far in 2 games. Fraser Minten has looked phenomenal. His face-off acumen has been terrible, and, Boston Bruins, you have one of the best face-off men ever to wear the black and gold. Sitting at home, why don't you give him a call and help Fraser Minten win a faceoff? I think if Fraser Minten starts winning faceoffs, Casey Middlestat should be worried, because he could take over his role. Minten has been exactly as advertised. It's interesting. They traded Brandon Carlo, not 1-for-1 for Fraser Minten. They also got a first-round pick. This could turn out to be a huge steal for Don Sweeney and co. on that deal. But Minten has been phenomenal. I think he's been hard to play against. And Sturm will not stop talking about him after every single game. Fraser Minten, to me, is exactly this style of hockey, the Boston Bruins hockey. I think Arvidsson has played well. I came out here thinking a lot of these signings this offseason were going to be a disappointment. So far, so good. They're not going to be the flashy team. The Bruins look really slow out there. But they're going to be a hard out. And if they're a hard out night in and night out, we're going to see a lot more wins out of this team than we're going to see losses. And if every team goes in underestimating the Boston Bruins could be, they could be a playoff team. They're on the cusp, especially when you look at the Atlantic Division and the way it's going to be. You got the Florida Panthers missing Barkov and Bennett, or Reinhart, sorry. Those are 2, not Reinhart, Jesus, Matthew Tkachuk. Those are 2 huge players to be missing. So the Boston Bruins need to be good early, I feel. You got the Leafs, who only have 1 goalie right now in Stolarz. I don't think they're, very confident in their Hildebees or anybody else that they're going to be putting in that net. So the Boston Bruins could capitalize and get some very important points over the next little bit. They got their next game against the Sabres. Then they play the Lightning, and then they play the Golden Knights. And then they play the Avalanche, and then they play the Utah Mammoth, and then they come back home and play the Florida Panthers. Brad Marchand's return to Boston. I'm sure he's going to get a standing ovation. These are some winnable hockey games. There's some tough games here. If they can come out and be above 500 by the time they return home, I think the Bruins are going to be laughing. I think that it will build confidence. It will build the core on this team. It'll build everybody to buy in to what Marco Sturm is selling. The players all came out of training camp saying that they had a better camp than they've seen in years. They felt that there was more consistency with the coaching style, which is great to hear, especially last year. We look at the blender that we saw. But you just look at what's going on. Elias Lindholm's got 2 goals in 2 games. You've got David Pastrnak with 3 assists, 4 points. Your plus-minus leader right now is Morgan Geekie. You got Fraser Minton with his game-winning goal that just helps him. You've got Jeremy Swayman with a .972 save percentage and a 1.00 goals against average. You have your goaltending that's been playing well. I'll say it. Both goalies have played well enough. I thought the third goal on Korpisalo, it was straight in, and maybe he just wasn't anticipating. He was hoping that someone would stop that guy from walking in. But other than that, I thought Korpisalo literally kept them in the game most of the time. He was making some phenomenal saves, especially in overtime. And I thought Swayman played really well. He played great in the World Championship. He played great in Game 1 against the Washington Capitals. And the Bruins are going to need that this year. They're going to need to be a hard out, night in and night out, and be one of the toughest teams to play against and grind teams down because they don't have the skill to win any other way. And if they buy into this system and just let the top 6 be all the skill and that bottom 6 just be sons of guns out there, the Boston Bruins might be this piss and vinegar thing that Cam Neely keeps talking about, because that's the only way they're going to win hockey games. At least it makes it entertaining. I will say, in that Washington Capitals game, in that first period, you could fall asleep watching that game. It was hard to watch. And that's been 2 first periods in a row. And I think that Marco Sturm is going to correct that and say they've got to just start generating chances. The Bruins got to stay out of the box because they can't go to the penalty box as much as they do and take stupid penalties. They're taking selfish, and I call them selfish penalties. When you take a slashing or a cross-checking penalty, it's selfish. When you take a tripping penalty on a guy on a breakaway, that's not selfish. But when you take a cross-check or a slash, it's selfish, and you got to get your head out of your butt. Like, stop that stuff, because it's going to make for a extremely, extremely long season. But so far, so good for the Boston Bruins. And yes, Cam Neely, got to give spade a spade. So far, playing this Big Bad Bruins, it's working. And I think that's all they have. We'll see how this season goes. Like I said, reevaluate what we've seen in the first 2 games. Game 11, game 12, we'll really see what they are, where the consistency is. If Jeremy Swayman can have consistent starts, I still think for them to be successful this year, they've got to give Korpisalo more looks in the net, and Korpisalo's got to play better. And he probably would play better if he's getting more starts. I know people are going to hop in the comments and say, well, Jeremy Swayman's the starter. He should be able to play every... No. The Bruins, for years, the way they play style and let their goalie see a lot of shots, their goalies need to have less starts. 3 for Swayman, 1 for Korpisalo, no back-to-backs, that kind of stuff. What they used to do with Hudobin, Rask, or Rask pretty much for the remainder of his career at that point. The Bruins are getting outshot game after game, and that's going to continue to happen. And the goalies are going to see a lot of rubber, so you need to give them a rest. So we'll see what happens. We'll see where this goes, but we did get a little bit of a scare last night, because Hampus Lindholm, who I thought has played phenomenal so far in his first 2 games, and a lot of people were talking about how good he looked in the preseason, it looks like he got a stinger. I can't say this for sure, but I went back and tried to look at all the plays, and there's a play, and unfortunately you're not seeing gameplay here, so just let me describe it to you, because if I show you gameplay, I get knocked down by YouTube, and someone took a strike against me. So what happened is Hampus Lindholm tries to keep the puck in, and this is what I see. They ring it around the boards, and he puts his butt up against the boards, and the puck flies up and hits him on the knee. It hits him on the left side of his knee, on his left knee, and then after that, he labors a little bit, and then he doesn't come back for another shift, and that's at the very end of the first period last night. After the game, Marco Sturm was said that it is a very minor thing. It was a little bit of a precaution. They'll get him evaluated on Friday, and then they'll go from there. I'm not a doctor. I'm just spitballing here, just having a conversation about it. From playing hockey a really long time, my guess is, if that is the play, he got a stinger, and if you think about it, the guy had knee issues last year, that can scare the living daylights out of you. Maybe they got a little bit of swelling because that puck flying around at like 80 miles per hour, it can hurt. So maybe he got a little bit of a stinger. Maybe he got some swelling, so they wanted to take him off the ice just to be precautious. I'm not sure if that's what it was, but like I said, I have to take Marco Sturm's word on this one, where he's saying it's a minor injury. And Marco Sturm so far has been a breath of fresh air when he's been talking to the media. He reminds me a lot of Bruce Cassidy of he's willing to just say anything. It's been refreshing to pretty much be transparent on what he's talking about. Montgomery was more of a joke around with the media and always cracking jokes, which is fine, but I like Sturm's seriousness, and at the same time, he's not afraid to answer any question. Him saying that it's a minor injury, I think Hampus Lindholm should be back and we have nothing to worry about, because I said this before, for the Bruins to be successful this year, they're going to need Hampus Lindholm. They're going to need Charlie McAvoy, and they're going to need them to play 82 games, or at least 80% of the season. They're not winning without these two, because those two help drive that defense. They help lead. I think Nikita Zadorov is going to have a great season as long as he stays out of the box. He's got to stop trying to do too much. It's interesting. In game 1, he was fine. In game 2, he started running around a little bit. They weren't calling a lot of things. You could see Chicago was all over Pasternak, and there was nothing being called. Pasternak got frustrated. And I think Zadorov took that personally. He wears his heart on his sleeve, and I love him for it. And he went out there and he was sticking up for his teammates. I get it, but he's got to pick his spots. I have zero issue with the scrums in front of the net. My rule about this all the time is if someone touches your blue paint, you make them pay for it. No one goes near your goalie. That's just plain and simple the rules. They go to retrieve a puck on the corner, put them through the boards. If they're behind the net, play the puck first. Remember, the behind the net is Gretzky's old office. It's a dangerous zone for anybody to have a puck. The goalie has very little visibility back there. They can see in the corners. So when the puck's behind there, worry about the puck, clear that puck out of your zone, and continue to trust in the system that Marco Sturm is entrusting in you guys. And I think that's a reason why a guy like Victor Arvidsson will flourish in this, because it's familiarity for Sturm. So he's going to put Victor Arvidsson in great situations, and he's been helping generate some offense. And I think that's how Casey Middlestad even got his goal. He recognized that Arvidsson was driving the play, and he's like, well, I'll just go to the net. This guy's doing pretty much all of it. I really like Mikey Easimont so far. He's my early 7th player award winner. I know I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit here, but I always come into these videos and I always talk about all the bad things that are happening. So I wanted to give on the positivities, because there are some great things that we've seen from this team so far. And I think that should be celebrated at the same time. So we'll see what happens, but I want to hear from you. What did you think of the first 2 games? What do you think of the Big Bad Bruins? Do you think that that's what we're going to do to win hockey games? And do you think Hampus Lindholm's going to miss any time? And, anything else you want to talk about, let me know in the comments. Until next time, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and go Bruins.